Hello. Hello there. How are you?
Oh,
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it so much. I know it's hectic having houses full of family right now. My house is full for sure.
yes, we might be interrupted by children or animals at some point.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And that's part of the Zoom culture right now. Cool. Well, Tracey, thanks for coming and being a guest on No Thanks. But yes, this the purpose of this video podcast is to have chill conversations with splendid people like yourself who have overcome chaotic relationships with substances via many pathways. And I think those stories need to be told, and hopefully they'll be inspiring to folks. And I just know it's a whole lot of fun as a hobby for me. So I get to noodle around on media stuff. And appreciate you helping me out.
Sure.
So first of all, who are you?
So my name is Tracey Helton. I'm known on social media as Tracey H415. I am originally from a place called Westchester, Ohio, where I grew up with a lot of addiction and mental health issues in the family. And I eventually, I was diagnosed with having mental health issues when I was 12 years old in the 70s. Well, now it's the 80s, during a time when there wasn't really any kind of adolescent mental health care. And so when I found opioids when I was a teenager in my late teens, that really resonated with me.
Absolutely.
So I can't relate to like the people saying I was addicted as soon as I first tried them, because I don't really think that's true. But I think that the feeling that it gave me was something that I decided that I wanted to continue to pursue after that. So, I make a joke about how I stopped drinking when I started doing heroin, and that's pretty much true. Like I was, doing problematic drinking and, taking hallucinogens, all this sort of usual experimental stuff. But it was very obvious right away that there was a stark contrast between myself and my peers that were using, because, they would drink beer for the taste of it. And I always wanted the effect. Like I never drank beer for the taste of it. Like I would use excessive amounts of weed, like just everything was in excess. It was all gas and no brakes. And so I can't even remember what year, but when I was in my late teens, I got introduced to opioids again. So I really, really liked that feeling of like being completely numb and sort of the euphoria of them, but really the sort of numbness that sort of muted the mental health issues that I had going on. And sort of the chaos of drug use appealed to me for whatever reason, because I had sort of grown up in this chaotic home environment with one stable parent, but then one parent, who had very serious alcohol issues. And that sort of is where my journey began. And then it wasn't very long until I got introduced to injection drug use. So I was an IV drug user during the time where there was no antiretrovirals. So you always had to worry about whether or not you were going to catch HIV.
Yeah.
Which many of my friends did and expired within a few years. And, just having to navigate that whole culture. And what really, really struck me when I came to San Francisco was the people who were working in harm reduction, although I didn't have a word for that at the time, the people who were working at the syringe exchange, because I had been using the same syringe for a year. It's like basically rusty fish hooks that were going in and out of my skin, circa, William S. Burroughs novels. It was terrible. And I had come out to California and they said, oh, well, you can go to the syringe exchange. And so, and I had access to heroin where I was from, but not like out here where they had open air drug markets. And so I got basically lost in San Francisco and was strung out on the streets here, and then became a very, very heavy polysubstance user from 1992 until 1998. And then I got, I've been homeless in 3 different states. I've been incarcerated in a couple different states. I've spent 9.5 months of my life in jail. And then I got into, so then in 1992.
Let me interrupt you for just a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, you paint a compelling picture, and one that resonates with me and hopefully with many other folks, why we use drugs. And I can relate to that early childhood experience with a specific medicine that had a feeling that I wish to pursue, and rediscovering that medicine later in life, and it turning to chaos, and ultimately diagnosable, and no longer working for me. So I think you do a great job explaining that to folks. There's this narrative out there of, we just want to get high, and that is not something that was true for me. I had found medicine for my trauma, for my chaos, for my being different and detached, and just didn't work for me after a while.
So I would definitely say there were times in my life where I pursued getting high, but what I found really early was that sort of excessive drug use led to a lot of consequences. So even though I was, had basically transitioned my whole life into drug use, I was always very cognizant of the fact, like, I don't want to do all of this. I don't want to do, excessive amounts at a time where I want to get high, not die. And so I think that sort of served me well in a lot of places, because I was more aware of, like, I don't want to do the whole bag because I might die, or I don't want to, I'm going to be completely incapacitated. Like, the goal for me was always to sort of moderate my emotions versus being so incapacitated and having a habit so big that I couldn't manage it. Which is why, that segues into, I had tried methadone a couple times, which methadone the first time really helped me because I actually had quit heroin for a while. As a result of being on methadone, I got off the clinic, but I still wasn't really doing heroin like I had. But then I had switched to meth, so that was a whole another unexpected consequence, was like the switching that went on. And then eventually I was just doing everything. I was doing, speed, heroin, cocaine at the same time in the same syringe, and like my life was just like ups and downs.
Sounds
mood
like
wise.
For sure. So we met on Twitter. I follow you on Twitter, and I found some messages that you were putting out there that I could identify with, that I felt like I might want to retweet. And I noticed that you had written a book, a memoir. And so when did you feel that drive to put pen to paper this story of yours?
So I was in a documentary that came out in 1999 called Black Tar Heroin: The Dark End of the Streets. And it was on HBO, and it showed a few of us who had been in heroin addiction and sort of like the spiraling that occurred. And I had gained some sort of minor celebrity through that. And so I had my kids, and I had been working doing overdose prevention starting in 1999. I really needed to break from that for a while, because I was just really burning out. I needed to have my kids and sort of, finish graduate school and have like this whole different life mindset for a little while. But then I had my ex-boyfriend was like, oh, you really should read these comments in these videos where people are asking questions about you and what happened to you in your life. Because the movie had reached some kind of cult status on the internet where a lot of people like to get high and watch the movie, which was, kind of strange. Or they'd be like kicking drugs and like want to watch the movie. So I thought, well, I should start communicating with them somehow about how I am sober, because it doesn't say in the video that I got sober. Right. I was sober a year when it even came out, like that I am sober, but also, I was interested in overdose prevention, like all the different types of things to go with that. And like was interested in pursuing giving out naloxone to people. It was like people were like asking me to send naloxone to people. So I started writing a blog that, and then I was posting it on Reddit, and it became, it's had like 1.5 million visitors or views over the years. Like it became very, very popular
Right.
But I was mostly writing addiction stories about different things I survived. And it became a way to like unprocess a lot of the trauma that had been stored in my head, and like people who had died,
Right on.
um, who were gone, and like, trying to honor them in some way.
Mhm.
But, some of it's like, you know, sort of like trauma porn, but some of it's funny. It's all like different across the spectrum of like, but it was real, like all the kind of real things I had been through, like what it's like to be dope sick when it's freezing cold outside and
Right.
snot is dripping off your nose, and you're like providing a visual frame for people, but then people know that I had gotten out of that. Like I had been in that place and I had got out of that. And I think that was really the impetus for me writing the book, because
The big fix.
people would, I'm sorry,
Big fix.
the big fix, because people would, when you read addiction, I think people in early recovery love to read addiction memoirs that like, sets off a certain thing in your brain, but they always have these addiction memoirs, but at the very end, it's like 4 sentences about how they got sober. It doesn't say how at all. There's no how, like,
I don't.
how did it happen? So
Yeah.
my book actually starts with me in jail getting, stopping the use of drugs. And then it's 15 years my recovery, because one of the things that I found, the sort of, the 20 something set had been lied to so much on the internet by people that they had believed in, to have a visual frame starting in 1999 of like all my internet history being consistent, where I'm saying the same things about, drug use, harm reduction, recovery, all these different things, gave me a not cloud, but gave me it put me in a place where people really could believe what I was saying was true. That when I was saying that people do get in recovery, and it should be any kind of recovery that you want, that people believe that, and they believed in themselves. And so that is why I started pursuing that whole vein, because first it started out with like the connection, people connecting with me, seeing me on TV, but then they connected with me during my writing. But then it goes to the place where it's like, and I've been in the place where you're in too, but there's a whole nother place that you can go to. And so I've stayed in contact with like hundreds of people who have since gotten off drugs. A lot of them have died, but a lot of them have gotten off drugs. And to see like that your drug use can just be a snapshot in your life. It doesn't have to be a continuing thing that goes on for your whole life.
That's beautiful. So I like that the memoir is pretty recovery heavy. And some memoirs fall short in that regard, like and then it was all better. And so tell me, I ask everyone, because there are many definitions of what recovery means to folk. And so you identify as a person in recovery today?
I do. So I'm in abstinence-based recovery. I would say probably abstinence light, because I take CBDs to go to sleep. I drink kombucha. I take psych meds. Like when I started in recovery in 1998, people told me that if you were on psych meds, you weren't sober. Like it was very. There's been a lot of opening up, but I also think that recovery is whatever it is to the person. Like I've had friends that were shooting heroin and now they drink, or they smoke pot and they don't do speed anymore. Like whatever it is to the person. Like I think getting stuck on any particular type of recovery and saying that they own the term recovery, especially the abstinence crowd, is disingenuous, because recovery is like it's a whole spectrum of whatever it is to the person.
Right on. Yeah. And many of the folks of my people who have professed to be in abstinence recovery, and I was aware of other neurotransmitter spiking activities that they were engaged in. I said, really, you're kind of not engaged in abstinence, but that's okay. You do you. And we need a broader, we don't even really need a definition of recovery. What I'm looking for is what does recovery mean to you? What have you gained from recovery? People talk about freedom and wellness. People talk about finding themselves, or what have you. What do you think about that?
I mean, if you would have asked me, 10 or even 20 years ago, I probably would have said was the freedom from having to use drugs every day. But I think that's a very narrow definition. In the very early phases, that's where you're at. But I think being okay with myself and like getting to get to know myself as a person without having to numb myself or like be afraid of everything, and also be able to like learn about the world and navigate the world in a new way. Because when you start using, especially when a teenager, that your brain is not even fully functioning. And so you have to like relearn so many things or learn them for the first time in a healthy way. And so really learning how to be happy and relatively healthy in the world has been a new experience for me. But I think every year recovery changes. And so the tools that you use have to constantly change where, at the very early stages, I was, very hardcore 12 stepper. That was my life. But I think now, my life, I like to go hiking and, I have cats and a dog and spend time with my kid. My things that are like recovery oriented are not obvious things, but they're important to me. And I think that's sort of like the opening of your world is what recovery means to me, really, because when you are using a substance, your life is so narrow. It's just like this little passage in between these two rocks that are like scraping against each other.
The opening of your world, becoming yourself, getting to know yourself, learning to navigate the world, learning new coping that was stunted by early childhood use. One of our previous guests, the author Maya Solovitz, has done such an extraordinary job of teaching the world about this disordered learning theoretical model. I began using drugs at a very young age and then found sustained recovery at 37. And suddenly I'm supposed to be this grown man. And I had to learn how to deal with disappointment and delayed gratification. I had to learn to navigate emotional turmoil and what have you. And that took time. Grew up in public, some folks say. Well, that's great. I love that. That's quotable. I'm always looking for something in the conversation to title the episode, and just the opening of your world. That's brilliant. What do you? So the book, we talked about that. So what do you do now, man? What do you do to promote whatever it is that you want to promote? And then we'll talk about what you do for kicks.
Sorry, I have a cat that's, 1 second.
That's part of
okay, ran off now. So the cat's paw is like progressively getting further and further under the door. So I work in public health. I can't really comment too much about it just because of rules that they have, but I work in behavioral health, and which I don't even like that term, but I do a lot of stuff with peer-based mental health. And I also run an overdose prevention project from my house where that's just like something I've been doing since 2013, where I mail Narcan and naloxone to people who contact me through the internet. And then I also do sort of peer-based education with people through TikTok and other social media outlets, typically Reddit, where I answer people's questions about harm reduction or addiction or whatever it is that they're interested in. So those are kind of like the three main domains of my work.
Right on. My day job is in the public health training and technical assistance space as well. And I really dig that you're engaged in that harm reduction outreach from your home on your time and educating the community on your terms on social media. Is part of why I've started this project. It's just all mine. I had a former employer, not my current employer, they're exquisite, that wanted to kind of maybe dictate what the content might be. And I said, I don't know about that. Well, that's good work, strong work. We talk about what people do for fun. I'm picturing you in San Francisco, right? Back in the day. So I'm curious, like, what kind of music do you dig?
I listen to hardcore music. I listen to punk rock music mostly, and hardcore music, and I don't know, but I like eclectic music. Like I like Parliament, I like
Oh yeah.
old, James Brown, and I like, funk music, different types of funk music, and I like some like 60s music for sure, but it really just I have very eclectic music taste.
Yeah,
Um,
it's good stuff. Yeah, no doubt. So what do you do for fun, for creative outlet, to promote your, your wellness, sustain your wellness when you're not working?
I like to go out in nature, and I like to take pictures of animals. Not for anybody, just for myself. Like I like to try to find different types of animals where they live at and try to get pictures of them. So everything from elephant seals to a weasel to I haven't got any pictures of foxes yet. But whales. I got some videos of humpback whales. And I like to spend time with my kids. Um, and I walk 2 to 5 miles a day. It's kind of hard right now because it's raining. So I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to get outside with the break in the rain. I mean, I just like to walk and go hiking. But I mean, my favorite thing to do is be out of the city, like in green somewhere, like either we're at the beach, but I like to go to the ocean and look in the tide pools and stuff like that. I think anything that pulls you away from your phone into a space where you're just like in the moment. And I write, I'm working on another book. So whether it gets published or not, I'm just working on another book. So, but yeah, I mean, those are my main hobbies.
Oh, that's fantastic. We share that bit of self-care fun, and I live near the woods, near a river, acknowledging this is the ancestral and traditional homeland of the Tuscarora tribes, but I just absolutely love walking out into the woods and hope to catch a glimpse of wildlife out there. I'm particularly moved when I see the great blue heron, and that's
Okay.
a treat, always a treat. All right, that's awesome. So folks, get put on the spot a little bit here, because I hope to have millions and millions of listeners, and we've talked about a little bit about why people use drugs, and what is when problematic drug use happens, and what happens in recovery, and what we do for fun. What's a message that you would like to send home to folks to close this out?
I mean, my message has been the same since 2013, which is that people should carry Narcan, not use by themselves, test their drugs. I think really today's message is that you really need to be using with someone who can administer the Narcan. I mean, Narcan has kind of been my life. Like that's how people know me, is I'm the Narcan lady. They're for the under 40s, I'm the Narcan lady. Like that's how a lot of them know me, because I've been talking about Narcan constantly, since 2013, like what on TV and social media and whatever. Like I have a Narcan shirt on now. Cool Cats carry Narcan. Like that's my whole.
That's so awesome.
I mean, that's my whole life. So I think I'm glad that the messaging is starting to really hit home, but it's unfortunate the reason why now.
Yeah.
But it's still not affordable. It's still not available for a lot of people. So, but that's like my main message. I guess this a side part of that would also be that like even people at the lowest part, what they consider to be the lowest emotional part of their drug use, can stop that chaotic use. And I'm a perfect example of that. Like can you stop, Kat? I'm not even sure that I mean this is what my life, this is a different kind of chaos. Like before it was like, is the dope dealer going to show up? Now it's like, is the cat going to scratch the bottom of the door and the dog pursue the cat? So it's just like different, it's chaos on a different scale. But I think anyone has the ability to stop or even moderate their use in a better way. Like I think everyone has to investigate their own relationship to particular substances and figure out what works for them. And I can't tell anybody. that I don't necessarily think abstinence is superior to anything else. It's just superior for me. It works better for me, but I can't put a value judgment on what works for anybody else.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, and hopefully folks will have access to the resources and support that they need to modify that relationship with what my last guest referred to as that bad medicine, and find the good medicine, the social contact and the purpose and autonomy. Cool. Groovy. I so appreciate you coming and sharing this time with me, and have a good day out there. Stay warm.
Thanks for having me.
Right on.